They referred to me as the mistake while toasting sister. My dad said, at least one of our kids turned out right. I grabbed the mic, cool. Because this mistake paid for your mortgage last month. My mom choked on her wine. My uncle started clapping. I was never meant to exist. That was made abundantly clear to me for as long as I could remember. My parents had my older sister, Amelia, as part of their plan, a perfect little family of 3. And then it happened. A mistake. An accident. The one thing they never intended but had to deal with anyway. Most parents would at least have the decency to lie about it. To say something like, oh, we were surprised, but we were so happy when you came along. But no. Not mine. They made a joke of it. Dad liked to tell the story at family gatherings. We had our one perfect kid, and then, whoops. Guess we weren't as careful as we thought. Mom would laugh along, sipping her wine, never once thinking about how that might sound to the kid who was apparently the result of a careless mistake. And Amelia? She ate it up. Being the planned child, the golden child, the one they wanted. It was like I was some stray they took in out of obligation. I put up with it for years, through every dismissive comment, every comparison, every time my accomplishments were brushed aside while Amelia's were celebrated like she had cured cancer. But I gritted my teeth. Swallowed the resentment, and kept my head down. Until her wedding. It was a massive event. No expense spared. A beautiful glass-walled venue overlooking the Pacific, custom floral arrangements hanging from the ceiling, string quartet playing softly in the background. The kind of wedding you see in movies, the kind that screams, my parents paid for this. And they did. Every single dollar. They drained savings, took out loans, all to make sure Amelia had her fairy tale day. Me? I was just another guest. Not part of the wedding party, not asked to give a toast, barely acknowledged beyond the polite. Oh, you came. And honestly, that was fine. I had learned my place a long time ago. So. I stepped to the bar, nursing a whiskey, watching my family from a distance like an outsider. Then came the speeches. Damien's parents went first, droning on about love, devotion, and how proud they were of their son. The maid of honor followed, gushing about how Amelia had always been the best friend anyone could ask for. Then my dad stood up, holding his glass high, grinning like he was about to deliver the speech of the century. To my daughter, Amelia, he said, his voice thick with pride. The one who made us proud, the one who worked hard, made smart choices, and, thank God, gave us a reason to hold our heads high. A round of polite laughter. My jaw tightened. Dad chuckled, shaking his head. You know, when your mother and I started our family, we had a plan. We were only going to have one kid. More laughter. I stared down at my drink, my grip tightening around the glass. And then, well, we had a little surprise. Even more laughter. I swallowed hard, my chest burning. And let's just say, one of our kids turned out exactly as we'd hoped. That was it. That was the moment. I don't know if it was the whiskey, the years of pent-up resentment, or the sheer audacity of my father standing there, publicly dismissing my existence like a bad punchline, but something inside me snapped. I stood up. Grabbed the mic from his hand. Cool, I said, voice steady, despite the roaring in my ears. Because this mistake paid for your mortgage last month. The laughter died instantly. My mom choked on her wine. My dad's smug expression froze. Amelia's mouth fell open. The silence was deafening. I exhaled slowly and turned to face the crowd. Oh, you don't want to talk about that? I asked, scanning the stunned faces. You don't want to mention how your oopsie covered your debts when the golden child was too busy living her perfect life to help? A few gasps. My uncle, Uncle Ray, the only decent one in the family, started clapping. Dad's face turned a deep shade of red. That's enough, he muttered, reaching for the mic, but I stepped back. No, I think I'm just getting started. I turned to Amelia. Tell me, sis, did you ever get a late-night call about an overdue bill? A maxed-out credit card? A foreclosure notice? She blinked, caught off guard. What? No. I tilted my head. Funny. Because I did. Because every time Mom and Dad found themselves in a hole, I was the one who got the call. I was the one wiring money into their account. I was the one bailing them out. More whispers rippled through the crowd. I looked back at my father. You want to make jokes about how I wasn't planned? Fine. But at least this mistake had your back when it mattered. Mom's face was ghostly pale. She reached for my dad's arm, whispering, do something. But what could he do? The truth was out. My heart pounded as I placed the mic down on the table. Took the last sip of my whiskey, and walked out of the venue. I didn't go back inside, I sat in my car, my hands still shaking, my mind racing. My phone buzzed relentlessly, calls, texts, all for my family. I ignored them. Then Amelia texted. Amelia, what the HLL was that? Me, the truth. Amelia, you embarrassed mom and dad in front of everyone. Me, good. They embarrassed me my whole life. Amelia, you're being dramatic. Me, I paid their mortgage, Amelia. Have you ever done that? She didn't reply. A few days later, my dad finally called. No apology. Just a clipped, we need to talk. I didn't answer. I knew how this played out. He wasn't calling to make amends, he was calling to tell me how I overreacted. How I ruined Amelia's wedding, how I needed to fix things. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I was done being the mistake they could take advantage of. For the next few days, I braced myself for the inevitable fallout. I knew my family well enough to know they wouldn't just let this go. I turned my phone on silent, ignored the endless texts and calls, and kept myself busy with work. I wasn't just some reckless black sheep of the family, I had built a life for myself. A damn good one. I ran my own business, had my own house, and unlike my parents, I didn't rely on anyone else to keep me afloat. But none of that mattered to them. In their eyes, Amelia was still the star. The daughter they wanted. And I was just the inconvenient afterthought who had somehow ended up more successful than they were. The first person to actually show up at my house was, unsurprisingly, my mother. I saw her car pull into my driveway through the window, and for a moment, I considered just, not answering. Letting her stand out there and stew in whatever frustration she had built up. But I knew my mother, she wouldn't leave. She'd sit out there for hours if she had to, waiting for me to cave. With a sigh, I walked to the door, swung it open, and leaned against the frame. You lost. She didn't even flinch. Mom had perfected the art of acting unbothered, even when she was furious. She stood there in her pristine beige blazer. A designer purse slung over her shoulder, looking me over like I was a stubborn stain she needed to scrub out of the family. We need to talk, she said, crossing her arms. I sighed. Fine. But if you're here to tell me how I ruined Amelia's wedding, save it. I don't care. She walked past me without an invitation, stepping into my house like she still had some sort of authority here. I shut the door behind her, already regretting this. You humiliated your father, she said, turning to face me. I scoffed. Oh no. Not Dad's fragile ego. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't a joke. It was a joke when he made that speech, I shot back. It was a joke every single time he called me a mistake. The difference is. I finally decided to respond. She let out a slow, controlled breath, probably trying to keep herself from blowing up. You could have handled this privately. Like how we've handled everything else privately. Where I just sit there and take it. I shook my head. No. He made it public. I just responded in kind. Her jaw tightened. Do you have any idea how this looks to our family? To Amelia's in-laws? Oh, my God. I let out a bitter laugh. That's what this is about. Appearances? It's always about appearances. Her voice was sharp. You think people don't talk. You think they won't judge us. The way you acted, the way I acted. I cut her off. Mom, I paid your goddamn mortgage. You and Dad were drowning. And you didn't ask Amelia for a dime. You didn't ask her because you knew she'd say no. But me? I was your safety net. The mistake who always fixed things. For the first time, her mask slipped. A flicker of something, guilt. Embarrassment. Crossed her face, but she quickly recovered. We never forced you to help, she said, her voice softer now, more careful. You did that on your own, I laughed, shaking my head. Wow. That's your excuse. That you never forced me. You manipulated me, Mom. Every time you and Dad needed money, it was always, we hate to ask, but we're in trouble. Always making sure I knew how desperate things were. And when I sent money. Oh, we're so grateful. We don't know what we'd do without you. Her lips pressed into a thin line. So you resent us for helping your own parents? I resent that you never appreciated it. That you still treated me like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to stay steady. You all have spent my entire life making sure I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. You called me a mistake in front of people. You let Dad humiliate me at that wedding. And the second I stand up for myself, suddenly, I'm the problem. She didn't answer. For the first time, she didn't have a response. We stood there, locked in silence, neither of us willing to break first. Then, finally, she sighed. I adjusted the strap of her purse. Straightened her blazer. Your father wants an apology, she said, voice measured. I barked out a laugh. Tell him not to hold his breath. She nodded once, then turned on her heel and walked to the door. Before she left, she hesitated. You may not think so now, she said, her voice quieter. But family is all you have. I didn't respond. I just watched as she walked out, got into her car, and drove away. And for the first time in my life, I realized, I didn't feel like I'd lost anything at all. After Mom left, I stood there for a long time, staring at the door. My hands were still clenched into fists, my breath coming in slow, measured exhales. I should have expected the conversation to go exactly the way it did. No acknowledgement, no real accountability, just an attempt to manipulate me back into submission. And yet, part of me had hoped for something different. A real moment. A shred of remorse. But that wasn't my family. By the time I finally moved from my spot, my phone was buzzing again. This time, it wasn't Mom. It was Amelia. I debated ignoring it, but I knew her well enough to know she wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. With a sigh, I answered. What? You need to fix this, she snapped. No hello, no pretense. Straight to the point, like always. I scoffed. Fix what, exactly? You humiliated Mom and Dad. You ruined my wedding. Oh, cry me a river, Amelia. Your wedding was perfect. You still got your dream day. The only difference is, for once in your life, people saw that I exist. She let out a frustrated breath. This isn't about you. No. Because Dad made sure to make it about me when he got up there and decided to crack jokes at my expense. She hesitated. And for a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she saw my side of things, but then she said, you could have just let it go. And there it was. I let out a dry laugh. Of course. Because that's what I've always done, right? Just shut up and take it. Look, I get that you're upset. No, you don't, I cut her off. You don't get it, Amelia. You never have. You were never the afterthought. You never had to sit there while the people who were supposed to love you made it clear every single day that they wished you didn't exist. She went quiet. Then, after a moment, she sighed. Mom is worried about you. I rolled my eyes. No, she's worried about what people are saying. Don't twist it. You're making this a bigger deal than it is, she muttered. My grip on the phone tightened. Am I? Yes. Look, maybe Dad shouldn't have said that stuff in his speech, but you didn't have to blow up the entire night over it. Now everyone's talking about you instead of my wedding, and you know Mom and Dad are furious. Good, I said flatly. She scoffed, are you serious? Dead serious. There was a long, tense silence between us. Then she sighed again, her voice softer now. Look, I don't want this to get worse than it already is. Can you just talk to Dad? Try to smooth things over. I let out a slow breath. No. She made a frustrated noise. Why are you being so difficult? Because I'm done, Amelia, I said, my voice even. I'm done bending over backwards for people who never once gave a damn about me. I'm done being the family's backup plan, the one who's expected to just sit there and take it. I'm done pretending that any of you actually care about me beyond what I can do for you. Another long silence. When Amelia spoke again, her voice was colder. If that's how you feel, then I don't know what else to say. Then don't say anything. And with that, I hung up. I expected to feel something: sadness, regret, guilt. But all I felt was relief. The days passed, and the messages slowed. Some family members reached out. Mostly through half-hearted texts that felt more like phishing attempts to gauge my mood than genuine concern. I ignored them all. Then, about a week later, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but I was distracted, and my guard was down. Hello. A deep, unfamiliar voice responded. Is this, sorry, I don't know if I have the right number. Are you the one who? Well, the one who said that thing at the wedding? I frowned. Who is this? There was a pause, then a chuckle. Right. Sorry. My name's Damien. I blinked. Amelia's husband. The one and only. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the screen, as if that would somehow confirm that this was real. What do you want? I asked cautiously. Just wanted to say that was the best part of the wedding. I let out a startled laugh. You're joking. Not at all. I mean, don't get me wrong, the food was good, and Amelia looked great, but that moment? Chef's kiss. I shook my head, unable to believe this was happening. You do realize you're married to the golden child, right? You're not supposed to be calling me, he sighed. Yeah, well, let's just say the honeymoon phase didn't last long. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? He hesitated. Look, I don't want to start drama. I get it now. I didn't before, but I do now. I wasn't sure what to make of that. Before I could ask what the HLL he was talking about. He cleared his throat. Anyway, I won't take up your time. Just wanted to say, from one family outsider to another. Respect. And with that, he hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. Damien, the guy who had married into this mess, was now seeing it for what it was, and if he was already having regrets. Well, after Damien's call, I sat there, replaying the conversation in my head. I couldn't figure out why he had reached out. Was he just being polite? Trying to stir the pot? Or was there something more? I knew Amelia. She had been pampered, adored, and put on a pedestal her entire life. I had no doubt she put on a picture-perfect act for Damien during their dating years. Just like she did for everyone else outside the family. But marriages had a way of revealing the truth. And if Damien was already feeling the cracks. Well, that was interesting. Still, I had my own life to worry about. I put my phone down, shaking off the lingering questions, and got back to work. I had clients to deal with, employees to manage, actual responsibilities that didn't revolve around my family's endless cycle of drama. But of course, they weren't done with me yet. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Again. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was Damien again, but something in my gut told me to pick up. I barely had time to say hello before my father's voice came through the line. Low, intense. You embarrassed me. I exhaled sharply, already exhausted. Hello to you too, Dad. I'm not in the mood for jokes, he snapped. Do you have any idea how many people have called me about what you did? Do you have any idea how humiliated your mother is? Mom's embarrassed. I scoffed. You mean the same woman who laughed along every time you called me a mistake? Wow. That's tragic. You don't talk about your mother that way. I'll talk about her however I want. Silence. A tense, burning silence. Then, his voice dropped lower. You crossed a line. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. No, Dad. You did. You crossed it years ago. I just finally decided to push back. After everything we've done for you. That made me laugh. A cold, bitter laugh that I couldn't hold back. Everything you've done for me? You mean treating me like an accident you had to tolerate? You mean taking my money when it was convenient, but never once treating me like I was good enough? You are ungrateful, he hissed. Do you think you'd be where you are today without us? I scoffed. Without you? You mean the people who never supported me? Who never showed up for me? Who never gave a damn until you needed my help? Watch your mouth. Or what? I challenged. You'll cut me out. Because let me tell you something, Dad, this door swings both ways. And for the first time in my life, I don't need you. Another thick silence stretched between us. I could hear his breathing, heavy and uneven, like he was barely keeping himself from exploding. Then, finally, he spoke. If you want to be part of this family, you will apologize. I closed my eyes. Took a breath, and then, with complete and utter clarity, I said, no. He asked in a sharp breath, like he couldn't believe I had the audacity to defy him. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice tight. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Wouldn't be my first. Then I hung up. And just like that, I felt lighter than I ever had before. I expected more fallout, but after that call, the silence stretched longer. No more messages from Amelia. No more guilt tripping from my mother. No more demands from my father. It was almost peaceful. Then, about a week later, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, you probably don't want to hear from me, but I think you should know something. I frowned, fingers hovering over the screen. Me, who is this? Unknown, Damien. I blinked. Me, what do you want? Damien, can we meet? In person. Now that was unexpected. Me, why? Damien, because I think you deserve to know what's really going on. My stomach tightened. Something was wrong. And whatever it was, I had a feeling this was only the beginning. I stared at my phone for a long time, debating whether or not I should meet Damien. On one hand, I had no interest in dragging out whatever drama my family was currently drowning in. On the other, his message had a weight to it, a quiet urgency that told me this wasn't just some petty gossip. So, against my better judgment, I replied. Me, fine. Where? Damien, there's a coffee shop on Oak and 5th. Tomorrow at noon. I agreed, but I wasn't sure what to expect. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop a little early, scanning the small cafe for Damien. I spotted him quickly, sitting in the back corner, hunched over a cup of coffee, looking like a man who had just realized he bought a one-way ticket to HLL. When he saw me, he gave a tired half-smile and gestured for me to sit. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted. I slid into the chair across from him, I wasn't sure either. So, what's this about? He rubbed his face, looking even more exhausted up close. Look, I don't want to start problems, but I also don't think it's fair for you to be left in the dark. Your family. They're not just mad. They're planning something. I raised a brow. What kind of something? He exhaled sharply. Your dad is talking about cutting you out. Completely. No inheritance, no contact, nothing. They want to make it seem like you've abandoned the family so that they can paint you as the villain to everyone who asks. I snorted. That's not exactly a shocker. I'm already the family disgrace. Damien shook his head. It's worse than that. Your mom and dad are trying to tell people you use them. But you only ever help them out financially because you want to leverage over them. Amelia's already feeding that to her in-laws. I blinked. Are you serious? He nodded grimly. Dead serious. I overheard them talking about it at dinner last night. Your mom was almost. I don't know, rehearsing. She was going on about how you threw money at them just to hold it over their heads and how they tried so hard to include you, but you always resented Amelia. I clenched my fists under the table, biting back the immediate rush of anger. Unbelievable. Oh, it gets better, Damien said, leaning forward. Your dad is planning to tell everyone you're mentally unstable. That you blew up at the wedding because you have anger issues and have always been jealous of Amelia's success. I let out a slow breath. That manipulative son of a, I know. Damien looked almost guilty. At first, I bought into their version of things. But after the wedding, after seeing how quick they were to spin everything, to make it all about their image, I started paying attention. And his lips pressed into a thin line. And they've been using you for years. The second you stopped being useful, they decided to cut you out. It's disgusting. I sat back in my chair, letting it all sink in. I shouldn't have been surprised. This was exactly the kind of thing my family did, control the narrative, protect their image at all costs, rewrite history if necessary. But this time, I wasn't going to let them win. I was done playing their game. It was time to flip the board over. I spent the next few days thinking, planning, waiting for the right moment. I wasn't going to stoop to their level. I wasn't going to lie or twist the truth. But I was going to make sure everyone saw them for exactly who they were. And the perfect opportunity came in the form of a family charity gala. Every year, my parents hosted this over-the-top event where they paraded around as generous benefactors, pretending they weren't drowning in debt. They invited all their friends, Amelia's in-laws, business connections, basically anyone they wanted to impress. I hadn't been invited, of course. But I had no problem inviting myself. So, on the night of the gala, I walked through the Grand Hotel doors wearing the most expensive suit I owned. Heads turned. Conversations quieted. I could feel the tension the moment I stepped inside. Mom, standing near the bar with a group of her wealthy friends, visibly paled when she saw me. Dad, mid-conversation with one of his business partners, clenched his jaw. Amelia, standing next to Damien, whispered something urgently in his ear. I walked straight to the stage. People shifted in confusion as I picked up the microphone. I tapped it twice, smiling when the sound echoed through the room. Good evening, everyone, I said smoothly. I'd like to take a moment to personally thank my parents for hosting this wonderful event. Truly, they're the most generous people I know. My mother forced a strained smile, my father's fists were clenched at his sides. And speaking of generosity, I continued, I think it's important to acknowledge just how much my family values support. After all, when times were tough, they never hesitated to accept help. Even when they had to rely on an unplanned mistake to pay their bills. A ripple of murmur spread through the crowd. My father stepped forward. That's enough, he said, voice tight. I held up a hand. No, I insist. Let's be honest here. You wouldn't want to lie in front of all these respectable people, right? I turned to the guests, smiling. Because according to my parents, I threw money at them just to hold it over their heads. That's the story they're going with. But what they won't mention is that I covered their mortgage, their debts, their expenses, not because I wanted control, but because they asked. Repeatedly. Silence. I gestured toward Amelia, and let's not forget the golden child. While I was wiring money to keep our parents from losing their home, she was busy pretending none of it existed. Amelia's face turned bright red. I turned back to my parents. It's funny. I spent my whole life being reminded that I wasn't planned. That I wasn't wanted. But the second you needed something, I was your first call. I leaned in slightly. You should have been more careful about who you took advantage of. With that, I set the microphone down and walked off the stage. The damage was done. People whispered. Their business partners looked uncomfortable. Amelia's in-laws stared at her with barely hidden judgment. And my parents? They had never looked so small. I walked out of that gala with my head held high, knowing I had finally taken back control. They wanted to erase me, to rewrite the story so that I was the villain. Not anymore. I was done being their mistake. Now, they were mine.
Good morning， 早安，妈妈们。借我你那个麦试下。你们收到了这个 Oxford Dictionary pen 没有啊 ？e-commerce 就是上次 Kobe Daddy 跟这个 e-commerce 配合，然后开卖的这个 e-commerce。就是 e-commerce 我自己呢也有买一套给我的孩子，然后呢我也买一套送给。